Talking to Cornelius. Conversation 9. There's a place called the Alexander McConaughey Centre, just a few kilometres away from where I'm writing this today. Most people outside this territory wouldn't have a clue what the centre is. I suspect you would guess the nature of the place straight away, old man. If there was any single individual who shaped the convict experience you faced in 1844, then it was Alexander McConaughey. He was the reason you were sent to live with hundreds of other convicts in a probation station, rather than being immediately and individually assigned to a farmer in some obscure corner of the Midlands of Van Diemen's Land. It would be no surprise to you that he was a man you would name a prison after. Alexander McConaughey was a Navy man, and given his name, it's no surprise that he was a Scotsman to boot. He had an interesting past. He'd survived as a POW in the Napoleonic Wars, and after liberation and the exile of Bonaparte, McConaughey was part of the 1812 British invading force that put Washington to the torch. The White House still has scars from that particular skirmish. The Scotsman was a man of his era, a geographer committed to scientific inquiry, a keen observer with a humanist vision of social advancement, a man with an appetite for learning and discovery. He was the type most admired among the 19th century establishment. McConaughey was a thoroughly well-rounded gentleman. John Franklin was about to take the position of Lieutenant Governor in 1836. He chose his friend McConaughey as private secretary. McConaughey was 49. He went to Van Diemen's Land on something of a double mission. He had all the responsibilities of being private secretary to Sir John Franklin, Lieutenant Governor of Van Diemen's Land, but he also had been instructed to gather information and send back a report on the state of prison discipline in the island colony. Somebody had to get to the bottom of it. Transportation had become a perennial headache and a matter for more than the occasional parliamentary inquiry in London. It had proven a long-term failure as a criminal deterrent. There was even evidence transportation was, at times, a motivation to commit crime. And certain reports on the numerous repeat offenders in the colony indicated the current assignment-based convict system was failing in its task of moral reformation. It was up to McConaughey to get to the bottom of what was going on and going wrong in Van Diemen's Land. According to the actual system of transportation, prisoners are, on their first arrival in the penal colonies, assigned to private service at the will of a public board, which endeavours as it best can to distribute them fairly and equally among the settlers, according to certain conventional rules laid down for its guidance. In the assigned service thus entered on, no wages are allowed to be given, nor is any other moral impulse employed, excepting the remote hope of indulgence after 4, 6, or 8 years, according to the original sentence. Until these elapse, the labour imposed is strictly coerced, or slave labour, and although accompanied with a fixed minimum amount of physical maintenance and support, sufficient to place above want, it is yet subject to all the discomforts and moral degradations incident to such a condition. The men are lodged in outhouses, 6, 8 or more under a stable roof. They sleep here on truckle bedsteads, generally without undressing. The floor is earthen and often very soft. They cook and eat in the same place, or one immediately adjoining, always in the roughest manner, and they're subject to the most severe regulations, which any master can get enforced on appeal to a magistrate by equally severe punishments. This is the usual picture in the country districts. In the towns there is more comfort. Sometimes, in the case of a good house servant, there is even too much, consistently with a state of punishment. But there is much more temptation. Not being allowed wages, yet desirous of procuring indulgences, the prisoners too often steal to obtain means, and all fly to liquor whenever they can obtain it, to drown humiliation and care. Alexander McConaughey's report. When McConaughey's critical report regarding the convict assignment system was published and tabled in the British Parliament in 1838, it provoked a firestorm of outrage among Van Diemen's Land's pastoral and business community. It would be an understatement to say McConaughey quickly became persona non grata in the insular intensity of the island's upper echelon. There was so much outrage, Franklin felt the need to distance himself from his old friend. McConaughey resigned, as Franklin desperately sided with those colonists who had started organising fiery community meetings in town halls across the colony. They were angry at the way that meddling outsider McConaughey had represented them as draconian slave masters. They were angry at McConaughey's naive, lily-livered, latte-drinking ideas, suggesting that an alternate system of reward and positive encouragement would be more beneficial for convict moral reformation. They were possibly most angry that the current system, with its easy access to convict labour and its implicit trust in the good character and intentions of landholders, was now under question. The whole thing was outrageous, and the fact that the powers that be in London were clearly buying the report was a travesty. The colony was going to hell in a handbasket, and all because of the meddling interference of that outsider. Franklin asserted he knew nothing about the details of McConaughey's report, and the whole business had been transacted in an underhand manner without his official approval. McConaughey reluctantly put pen to paper to refute the Lieutenant Governor's assertions. The Lieutenant Governor most certainly, then, knew of my individual commission to report on the working of the existing system of prison discipline in this colony. Else why, among other proofs, did His Excellency receive and transmit my official reports? They were from the beginning distasteful to him, and had there been no previous special arrangement that I should transmit such, I could have had no pretext for pressing their reception. Yet I did so press them, and they were received and transmitted. Alexander McConaughey, Launceston Advertiser, 25th of October, 1838. McConaughey and Franklin went their separate ways. The Scotsman was appointed Superintendent of Norfolk Island in order to trial a new system of managing the convicts there. The legacy of his report was soon felt in Van Diemen's Land. Franklin was instructed to end the assignment system that McConaughey had criticised and implement a new probation system. And you, old man, entered into that Scotsman's legacy as you moved north from Hobart to the probation station in a place then called Jerusalem, but which we now know as Colebrook.